Yeah, hi everyone. I'm an artist from Mumbai. My name is Alison Pinto, and I'm very excited to be with you all today. I paint in various mediums, as you can see in my Instagram, and I have been painting in, say, acrylics and charcoals and oils and various things, but I started watercolor much later, and it was frustrating initially to to admit that. Once I overcame my frustration with the video, well, with the medium, once I overcame my frustration with the medium, um, I got very addicted to the results that watercolor gives, and the quirks of watercolors just set it apart. And you'll see that throughout my Instagram. I'm largely invested in watercolor. Uh, so everybody, since I'm seeing you can see my face now. Hello, and very excited to be with you today. Hi, and while it started as a passion for me, I'm very fortunate today to be able to work professionally in watercolor as well. Uh, I'm now Daniel Smith ambassador for brand ambassador for the watercolors, and I'm an art educator. I do a lot of art commissions as well. I'm also state head for India for the International Watercolor Society. So my life is pretty much dedicated to this, and I'm very glad that I have the ability to do this. So just to keep it really quick and short, if you'd like, we'll just talk about, is it okay? We'll talk about the flow of what we're going to do today. Is that fine? Yes. All right. So very briefly to tell you the things that we're going to cover, I'm going to talk about my materials that you can see here. And maybe you could switch the screen, Tara. Yeah, so we're going to talk about my materials over here and my preparation that I do before I start a painting. As you've seen some of my work, just to show you some things that are on my easel right now. These are the kind of things that are on my easel right now. So part of a massive commission of about 100 paintings. So that's the kind of thing I'm doing. So when I'm preparing for any of my paintings, there's a process that I follow, which I'll talk you through. Then we will talk about why and how you transfer your paintings. We'll talk about tracing paper versus using transfer paper. I'll show you how to use a dot card, which I'm sure you all have one in your kit today. And we'll discuss the mixes that we are going to do from the 4 colors to achieve this. Okay, and then we'll start painting. Once we finish the demonstration, we'll discuss what we've learned. So should we get started? Yeah.
Go for it. Thank you. And I just wanted to mention before we move forward, because I forgot to in my intro, is that what's even more exciting today is that we have our first international artist with us doing the event. And I think it's super cool that Alison is in India. What time is it there now, Alison?
Oh, it's 11:15.
At night. Yeah. So thank you for staying up late and joining us today. We really appreciate it.
Well, you can see I'm excited about it. So yes. Okay, so let's get to it. To give you an idea, this is the painting that we're going to paint today. All right. You've already seen it in our poster, and you can see the amount of colors that we've used here. It looks very colorful, and these are the colors that I've used in the painting. Okay, so just to give you an idea of my materials, the thing that I use is watercolor paper. You all will be having a sheet of watercolor paper. When you choose your paper, it's important to have 100% cotton paper. That's very important because then your results come out really well. So a lot of the papers that are on the market can be cellulose based, and that is not fun to work on. So you get great results almost effortlessly if you have great paint and good paper. The rest is okay. So we have the paper. What I do is I mount the paper onto a board like this. Okay, so this is just an ordinary corrugated board. and I've mounted the paper onto it. I stick masking tape around. So I just use a regular masking tape. Okay. This is my dot cut, as you know. Now, what I do is I come in with the drawing. It's always important to keep in mind that the secret to a good, successful painting lies in a good drawing. So putting the effort into the drawing makes a big difference. So keep that in mind. Don't haste with the drawing. Try and take your time over it, and then the watercolor will automatically follow through and turn out really well. So I have my paper. I keep my tubes handy. So what I do is when I'm about to start a painting, I will look at my reference, which is here. And then I'll go, okay. So you can see I've done a lot of studies here. So I do this, I experiment with colors, and I'll see, okay, what kind of colors will go with this. I work towards choosing the least number of colors that I can use with the maximum amount of results in my painting. And yes, guys, please get yourselves a cup of tea, coffee, or whatever, and sit down with me. It's nice to enjoy when you're painting, no? So what I'm going to do is I have experimented with a number of colors, actually. There's New Gamboge and Opera, there's New Gamboge and Quin Rose, there's New Gamboge and, Quin Gold and Opera. Then the various types of greens. I kept playing with it till I got the result I want. Okay, so then once this is done, I swatch it out. These are my 4 selected colors, and you have the dot card of these. So you have the New Gamboge, you have the Quin Rose, you have Phthalo Green, blue shade, and you have Carbazole Violet. Now this acts as a roadmap, and I have been working on these through the years, and I found that doing these little roadmaps, the color little maps for myself, and then I file it away with my little bit of notes, what I do. I'm not very good at memory. So what happens is 2 years, 3 years down the line, if I particularly like something I've done in a painting, sometimes we do something and we love it. So what we do is I can pull out this thing and I can refer to which colors. It's because Daniel Smith has such a wide range of colors, and it's very difficult to stick to just a few. So I experiment with many colors all the time, but this helps me keep track of what I've used in a particular painting and what results I got. Because sometimes the pigments behave so unusual. So, all right. So now what I've done over here is I've mixed in the colors. We will do that exercise as well. So what I've done is I've mixed in Quin Rose and New Gamboge, and we get this lovely hue here. Then again, New Gamboge with Phthalo Green blue shade. Now this is going to be, let's see where it's used. So you're going to use this over here. You're going to use the New Gamboge and Phthalo Green blue shade in your background. Can you see? Variations of it, if you go more diluted, you'll have nice loose washes. If you go more intense, you'll have more saturation over there. Then I've used New Gamboge, Phthalo Green blue shade, and Quin Rose, all 3 to create a lovely neutral. So now if you vary the quantities of these, you can vary the shades in your neutral. So I've used a lot of neutrals here, but it's just those 3 colors that I've mixed. Okay, so knowing how to mix those colors is very important. Then I wanted a hint of blue to create the patterning in the Kingfisher's feathers. So I've mixed my blue by using, where's the shade card? I've used my Carbazole Violet and Phthalo Green, these 2. So when you let them flow together, they create a lovely cool blue. It's very, very easy to create the effect then. Okay. And then you need your darkest darks for the eye area, for a little bit of the line, for a little bit over here. So for the darkest darks, I have mixed just Phthalo Green blue shade and Quin Rose. So when they are intense colors, and when you mix them, you get this wonderful deep dark. Now the Phthalo Green itself is a very versatile color. It gives you excellent density So it's a transparent color, it's non-granulating. And when you layer it, you can layer it and get a near black intensity to the color. So you mix a little bit of quin rose with that and you get a deep dark. So that's pretty amazing. So now what I've done for all these colors, I've chosen colors that are all transparent. I haven't chosen an opaque. So in my palette here, you can see I have both the yellows. I have the New Gamboge here, which is on your yellow-orange spectrum. And I have Hansa Yellow Light, which is more like a lemon yellow. Now, the reason I didn't pick this one, even though it's fresher, is because it has white in it. So now when I mix it, it could create mud for me. The way to avoid creating mud is usually to pick the more transparent colors. Okay. And what else? All these colors are also non-granulating. So when I mix them, again, I safely mix them without getting mud. You can see even the neutrals are not muddy. They're really lovely, fresh neutrals. Again, the carbazole violet also is, so the carbazole violet, the phthalo green are both high staining colors. They stain your paper, so you will have a challenge if you want to lift off color. Okay, now the plus side of having a highly staining color is that you can build up the density. Like I said, you can make them really dark. So you can even make an entire painting with just one color, and you can get your lightest lights and your darkest darks. And a painting is very successful if you have achieved the tonal values of your subject. So for that reason, I love staining colors, as well as I love the fact that they're all transparent, they're non-granulating. I do love granulating colors, but not for certain subjects. I use them for certain things and not for everything. So these things play a role when you're picking your colors. So another quick thing, when I'm bringing in my drawing, okay, now what I do is I will trace out my drawing. What I do is I draw it onto a tracing paper. For me, this is like a gateway paper. Okay, this is what architects use for their drawings. So you can take, I think Plaza has put a nice link to a nice tracing paper. You can probably pick that up. Now, would anyone like to see how you do a tracing? Are you familiar with how you use a tracing? Yeah?
Yes. Yeah, go ahead and cover it, Alison. I think that, you know, any technique that, because even if people are used to it, your technique might be a little bit different. So that's a great thing.
I'm not going to do a lot of this. For example, just for speed, normally I would sketch it out, but right now I'm just going to trace it out for in the interest of speed.
It's okay, Babu.
Is somebody asking something? Okay, so we're just going to do the Kingfisher's head. Okay, just this much. Now what you do is when you have this much done, as much as you want to trace, you're going to turn it over and you're going to mark this area with graphite. Now the alternative to this is you get a Saral, is it Tara? You get a graphite paper, which is also listed.
The Saral transfer paper.
Yeah. Now I have used Saral transfer paper extensively early on in my list, and what I found is it has a bit of a backseat texture. What I loved it initially because it gave me a graphite line, which you cannot trace out otherwise. Most tracing papers are dark colors, so it gave me a graphite line. But what I found out was it was waxy and you could not erase the line. So when you're doing a watercolor paper, sometimes you want to be able to erase certain lines, soften them out. You don't want hard lines. And what's the reason we're tracing? Okay, typically people will draw directly on their watercolor paper. But the reason we're tracing is because, at least according to my method, I like my paper to remain pristine right up till the end of my painting. So what happens is when you're drawing, you tend to erase quite a bit. And when you erase or when you're moving your hand around, you get a lot of graphite smeared into your paper, as well as erasing damages the fixative, what's it called, which seals the paper.
The sizing.
Size. It damages the sizing of the paper. So when you're then applying your watercolor, you will find certain flaws showing up, certain damages. This gives you, you can finish your entire drawing on this, mark the graphite on the other end, and then comfortably trace it out. Make sure your paper doesn't shift when you're working. Usually if I'm trying to transfer, I tape it down at all ends and then I keep checking. Okay, so if my line is not covered here, I'll make sure that's covered. And that's pretty much it. Then you can go in there and kind of finish it up the way you want. But your lines are delicate. And if you need to erase, you can erase the whole thing. So you're not restricted by the limitations of a graphite paper. So while graphite paper is very handy if you're in a pinch, then you got to use it very carefully and delicately. So this is a simple thing of using tracing to transfer your drawing. So once your drawing is transferred, you go through your colors and you select your colors and then you work through, keep a fixed palette. Don't use one pink, then switch to another pink because it looks better later on in your painting. If you want to use both, use them at the start. The colors that you use should echo throughout your painting. You do not start with a nice, quin rose here and go to a nice fluorescent opera pink on this side. That resonance is not there. It looks disconnected. So keeping a palette makes a big difference. And what we're going to do is quickly, we're going to just swatch out these colors. Thank you.
And Allison, while you're about to do that, there were a couple color questions. So Barbara asked what the three colors you used in the muted background color were.
In this one, we have used rouge, phthalo green, blue shade, and quin rose.
Okay. Great.
Do you want to see me swatch these out, or shall I just share this?
No, I think swatching, especially if you're mixing and and using, is a good idea.
Okay.
And then I think, Carmen, that answered your question.
Yeah. So what watching you?
Okay, so sorry that just to clarify, Barbara didn't hear. It's phthalo blue, quin rose, and is it new gamboge or?
New gamboge.
Yeah.
That's right. Okay, another thing I do is I keep 2 containers of water because I'm going to keep rinsing my brush into one, and I'm going to keep the other container of clean water, which I can use for my, whenever I need to dampen a surface, I want clean water, which doesn't muddy my painting. So 2 containers of water. In this case, I've kept a 3rd one for myself because I'm doing the demonstration right now. So I want to have fresh water ready all the time. I also keep a little sponge here. So when I'm working, I keep, if there's too much of paint on my brush, I tap it off here. That's very handy. I also keep a swatch, a little piece of paper where I keep testing my colors. Okay, so it's very important to keep testing your colors. My brushes, typically for myself, I use silver brush black velvet. Okay, this is a size 10. This is a oval shape. And I would probably use a little pointer as well, which is a series 7-0, and a flat, any flat that you have. One flat should do the trick because you need a flat for the background. Okay. So very quickly, we're going to jump in here and just swatch these out. I'm sorry. Okay. So I'm picking up the new gamboge, and you're going to want your colors to go paler to darker. So you're going to keep that in mind when you're working. And we're going to mute that. See, your new gamboge goes into a lovely pale shade. And you can get a nice orange out of this. Okay, so you're going to have a pale yellow and a nice orange, which is in your Kingfisher's belly. Next thing, now I've washed my brush. I don't want it to mess up my this. So I'm going to use pale wash of New Gamboge again, and a pale wash of the tallow green. So now you'll see that is being used in the background. And as you intensify the color, you can go darker in some areas like that. Okay. And if you like, you can also, while you're working, you can add in, okay, that's a little dark, but you can add in a little bit of the Carbazole violet also. So you get these nice little shadowy effects. Okay. So that's one mix. And now for the neutral, somebody was asking. So neutral takes a little bit of this. We're going to put in a yellow. And then we're going to go to tallow green, and I'm going to mix in primrose. Okay. I have that. Okay, so that gives you a lovely neutral. Now, as you intensify the colors, I think use more saturated colors, you will get darker tones. Then we have the tallow green, which on its own is such a beautiful color. Look at that. Such a lovely color. I'm gonna mix that with a little bit of the Carbazole violet. And when you're doing the patterning for the Kingfisher, that's how you're going to work it in. All right. Is it visible? Yeah, can you see? Then the next one. Again, we're going to use the tallow green. I'm going to mix in the Carbazole violet from the other end. So it creates this nice bluey tone. So you have like a reddy bluey mix for some parts of the Kingfisher. To set off the light, nice fluorescent green, you need some hints of blue. Okay. The last. Okay, so the last thing is I'm going to take a very dense version of the Carbazole violet. Can you see how dark that gets? It's just, you can get the darkest area for your eye out of that. So you can go as light as possible and as dark as possible. These colors are wonderful for mixing a whole wide range. And actually they mix so beautifully. You could even mix, for example, just to give you an idea, you could mix this. This is not in our painting today, but why not try? You could mix in a bit of the carbazole violet with this and gives you this lovely juicy fuchsia. So these colors are lovely. Okay.
Allison, Carmen's asking what was the lower right mixed with? I think on that card, was it? Carmen, you can unmute yourself for a second if you want to clarify. Was it this card or the other swatch card? Because I think this one in front of you, Allison, is just the straight carbazole violet, right?
This?
Yeah.
Are you talking? This is carbazole violet and phthalo green blue shade.
Okay. Okay. Then I was wrong. All right. Hopefully
This-
that answered Carmen's questions. Okay.
Where's the mix? No. These two. All right, clear? Okay, so I think we've covered materials. And towards the end, I may use a white gel pen. Not necessarily, but in case we want to add a few highlights, we could definitely use that. I keep my tubes handy because then you can refresh your paint. This is just my process. Today we'll be using color from the dot card. So I just want to also experiment with that and show you how you use your dot card. You have to keep in mind that you're using, you will not be using a palette, you're working from this. So you're going to be careful about, you have to wet your color, always with clean water. And then you can pick it up and these disperse beautifully with a damp brush. You pick it up and lay it in. So you have plenty of pigment. I think you have a 4-dot card as well as you have my palette, Alison Pinto palette. So you could work with those. We have been doing those.
Yes, everybody should have both the dot card in front of you, which is your specific palette, plus the 4 colors with larger dots that are specific to today's project.
Yeah, so you have a backup here for more color in case you need, but really the dots are so saturated, so you should manage quite comfortably with the dots. The only thing is that you have to first just dampen it a little bit and then let it get wet and then you use it. Okay. All right. Okay, so I think we are through with the transfer and the how and why of that. Let's get painting, shall we? Okay, another thing is I always keep some tissue at hand in case you need to mop up a certain amount of color or any errors. And yeah, there we go. So this is the reference we're working with today. I'm very accustomed to standing and painting, but we should try it this way. And I'm going to keep a little swatch of paper here to keep testing my colors in case I need to.
Could I ask you real quick to hold up the picture again of what we're doing?
Yes, I think this should be enclosed in your kit as well, a photo of what we're doing. Can you see that? Yeah. So you're going to
Allison, the line art is included, but not the actual color photograph. So it might be good to bring that back occasionally during the event and reference it.
do that. Yes.
Okay.
Keep reminding me each time you want to see it back again, and I'll bring it back here. Is that okay?
Oh, that's perfect. If anybody wants to unmute themselves and just ask to see the image, that's totally fine.
Yeah. Okay. Let's get started. So what I'm going to do is first dampen this area. I want to mix. I'm cleaning up my space here. Make sure you start with a clean surface always.
It's actually a good idea. Abby and Kelly recommended that folks take either a picture or a screenshot of the color image. We can hold that up. Allison, do you want to hold that up for another 10 seconds so folks that didn't have a chance to do that before can do that now?
Yes, yes.
Okay, great. And then I think we'll be set. Thanks, guys.
Scott,
Love the group collaboration.
Scott, are you here? Scott?
Oh, there you go. Sorry.
Okay, I think I've mailed you this image. Maybe you could just drop it in the chat. You can just attach it in the chat.
Yes, it's yeah, let me go ahead and find that real quick and I'll put it in the chat there.
Great. Are we done taking pictures?
I think you're good.
Okay. What I'm going to start with is the part of the orange and red, the orange and yellow area. So what I'm doing is I'm pre-dampening my paper. And here I'm being careful because I don't want messy outlines. I prefer working wet into wet because it keeps my paper wet longer and gives me a chance to create softer effects that way. I think you would have it in the email you sent to.
Yeah, I'm finding the finished piece, but I'm still searching for the reference.
We have it, and Allie can put that
Yeah, if you can share it, that would be great. because
in the
it'll be-
chat because Lauren just let us know we have it too. So
Yes. Okay, so now I've dampened this area. I'm going to go in with a mix of. I'm starting off light. I'm not being too careful about the patterning, and I don't want you to obsess over it either. But what I'm doing initially is only dropping in the yellow. And I'm doing it pale because I can always go darker if I need to after that. And I want some of that pale whitish underbelly to be seen as well. I'm looking at this largely as shapes. I'm not trying to see it as a bird. I'm just trying to see this as one big oval shape. And if you look at your paintings that way, you'll find you will be able to do it a lot more effectively. You'll be able to make your painting a lot more effectively. So here there's a little bit of green, so I'm trying to leave that portion there. I'm gonna just draw out a few. So underneath the orange is obviously the yellow. So I'm going to go deeper with my yellow in those areas. And since it's nice and wet, I can keep working. we have some here. This lower belly tends to go a bit on the slightly neutral side, so we'll add that in later. But for now, you just need your underwash of yellow and orange.
And Allison, this is the new gamboge, right?
It's purely new gamboge and nothing else.
Right, just plain, just diluted, okay.
Some areas I'm adding it a little thicker because I want that patterning to be seen. And don't be shy with your color. You can keep your pale areas pale. But then if you feel like there's a nice density somewhere, drop it in. The gamboge also has this trick that it actually sets values. You wouldn't expect it of a yellow, but when you finish, you'll see wherever you put the gamboge, it has actually set deeper values for that area. So it's a great way to get your values in at the start. Like I said, values are super important for you to get each of us. And now I'm going to try and mix in some of the fingers. Try and do that here. Dilute that a bit. Again, I'm just broadly following shapes. No signs to just so it's still damp and I'm working it wet into wet, but I'm still getting the streaks. So it's not very wet and it's not swimming in water, but it's still damp. So this technique is great. And you don't have to be very perfect about it. You don't have to stress over it because the brain kind of completes the image. Done. For the viewer, it completes the image. So you don't really have to stress over it too much.
Allison, we have a couple of good questions here, if you don't mind. The first one is, what size brush are you using?
This is a silver brush size 10.
Right, so it's a 10 round.
It's a 10 round, yes.
Okay, great. And then what do you do if your paper dries out too much before you're done laying down your color?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So if your paper dries out before you're through, what you're going to do is you're going to stop right there. You're going to let it dry completely. And perhaps if you can, blow dry it, because then that kind of makes sure that it's bone dry. And you test it with the back of your hand. If it's cool to the touch, that means it's still got some moisture in the paper. But if it isn't cool to the touch, then you're good to go. And once it's fully dry, then you can re-wet the space and go back in there and work.
And would you re-wet that the same way you did initially with like wide swatch of water, or would you use a mister spray?
No, I wouldn't use a mister in this case because this is a more precise subject. So I would go in and do it with my brush, like how I did it at the start.
Yeah, great. And then Barbara's actually asking how humid it is where you are, because and she's right that the humidity will affect how long your paper stays wet.
Yes. So we are having monsoons here.
Mm.
We are in a very humid climate and my AC is on and I'm sweating. So you can understand how humid it is.
So good for watercolor painting, I guess.
Good for
Not so
water.
good for everything else.
Got that. Yes. Now what I'm doing is I'm just spreading out my brush. I have a little pigment left on it and I don't want it to go in too dark.
Can you show how you did that again? You just splayed your bristles? Okay. Very cool. Thank you.
So this kind of works really well if you're using a natural hairbrush and less so if you're using a synthetic brush. Pretty cool, right? The way it works.
It really adds a very nice texture.
And quick. It's not time consuming and painting each hair, each feather. Okay, before that dries, I also want to go in and add some of this. Here. Now it's okay when it overlaps because it does that in the subject as well. And we'll do a little bit over here. But here I'm going to mix it with a little bit of the Carbazole violet because we want a slightly bluey shade. So we test that. Yeah, so it gives you a faintly bluish shade. I'm going to put that in. And then add in the bright color again. So I'm switching between colors while I'm working, as you can see. And I'm blending it in. Okay, so I think the body's made good progress. We have a fair amount of values, but since it's still damp for me, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in a little bit more. I'm going to take some of that and mix it with that. So I mixed all the colors, all the 4 colors. So the end result is a color like this. Okay, now why do I want this? Because I'm going to use it very faintly. And you can see what I'm doing. I keep patting off the excess paint. You need a few darks because then that will give you the nice 3-dimensional results.
Alison, when you're switching colors, can you just take a beat and elaborate on that a little bit? Because it seems like some folks are missing the color switch.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
I'll do that. I am mentioning it though, but perhaps I'm moving a little bit quicker just to prevent the paint from drying.
Which absolutely makes sense.
Okay, so I'm just dropping in this neutral that I mixed. The reason being I want it to look nice and round and fluffy. Does it? Can you see the values? When you look at something on a camera, usually you can see the values a lot better and see whether it's working or it's not working. Yeah, I can see a little patch here. So what I'm going to do is add that in. I'm mixing in the gamboge again with the quinrose. And I'm just gonna add in a little bit here. That's what I can see in the image. A little bit of definition now, not too much. Yeah, okay. So would you like me to take a brief break here and maybe answer some of your questions while you catch up? Yeah, the blue I'm using is a mixture of, I'm mixing the green, the phthalo green, and I'm mixing the carbazole violet. Okay, so when you mix them together, you get a nice bluey tone. Okay. Do you want to take a quick break while this dries, and do you want to ask me some questions?
I think it's a good chance for everybody to get caught up, and certainly if we're taking this break, please feel free to unmute yourself and ask questions directly. Folks must be very busy working.
I have a question. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I see you're using a dish with little slots in it. Do you always use that as opposed to like a big solid?
Are you talking about my palette?
Yes.
Yes. Yes, this is a portable palette that I've been using from the time I started, and you can see it's as grungy as ever because it's comfortable, and I use this for everything. Whether I'm traveling or at home, I use the same thing.
So you squirt your those tube colors inside the little squares.
Yeah, I fill in color, like you can see, there's not a lot of color. I usually fill them like half full because I find that when you refresh your colors often, the colors in the painting also come out fresher. Because typically when we're painting, our palette stays open, dust settles in. So putting in fresh color, I prefer to do that. And I do very large paintings. So I would have liked to show you some today, but I think I don't have this. I'm not too comfortable with the screen share option now. I would have set it up. But you can check out my Instagram. I have large size paintings and those take a long time. So your palette lies open and it has to keep drying out also in between during this.
I just use acrylics. I've never watercolored before. So I'm a very beginner.
Okay. That's another question I wanted to ask. If we can put people on gallery view, I want to see how many of you are beginners, if you can raise your hand. If Tara's there. One second, let Tara put us on gallery view, or let me see if I can do that. Yeah.
I think it's an individual thing.
Okay.
I don't think I can spotlight gallery view, but I can certainly try.
I do have a question once more about the blue.
Mm-hmm.
How did you mix the blue?
Who is that?
Susan Engel.
Susan. So Susan, you remember we have 4 colors.
Yes.
And I'm mixing these 2, the green and the purple.
Got it. Thank you.
And may I ask how you mix the brown that you added last to the lower part of the body?
Yes. So I'm mixing in, like I said, I'm mixing in all the colors. So I mixed in a little bit of phthalo and violet, and I mixed in all 4 colors basically. I mixed in the quinrose, and then I add in. So depending on the proportions you have,
Okay, thank you. Right.
So mix the 4 colors in varying proportions and just play with it just for fun. You'll find that you can mix a large number of neutral shades, which is a lot of fun. And any of you are well experienced artist a few years down the line? Just to understand the balance. Okay.
I have
Okay.
one more. To keep the belly white, you just didn't paint on it.
Yes. So
Okay.
in watercolor, essentially, you to keep your whites white, you make sure that you don't paint on them. You can use masking, but then masking leaves very hard edges. So when you now, particularly when we're painting the eye, that's when you're going to have to go in really carefully and make sure that we don't cover the whites. If you can cover the whites, nonetheless, being a fresher, you don't have to worry. What we are going to do is we can use either white gouache or white pen if you've got some, and touch it up. So I'm going to quickly dry this out. I'm muting myself. I'm going to dry this out so that I can continue painting the rest without damaging this. Okay. So
And
I'm
then
just
real quick, Allison, let's say that somebody had put, too much color down on that belly and it was still wet. Could you take a paper towel or some other kind of tool to lift that color up to get that white back before it dries?
you will not get the white back. That's the thing when you're working
Okay,
with this, you will not get the white back. So that's something you'll have to be careful about. But
got it.
what you can do is touch on that once. Supposing this is the belly and you colored it on.
You're a little muffled.
Can you hear me?
That's better, yeah.
Yeah. Now, supposing this is the belly and you work on it, I'm not sure, but we can typically this color doesn't lift too well, but so you can try.
Is
Wet
the,
the stick. You're
is
gonna
the
wet.
issue with lifting that these are staining pigments? I mean, they would work if they weren't, or?
Yes, that's exactly what. So if they were not staining pigments, you could lift them. Now, can you see what I'm doing? I've wet the whole space, the entire space. And I'm scrubbing it only to the center, and then I pat it off. So you can see I've created a bit of a white belly. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
that's better than, you get part way there or most of the way there. So I
Okay.
like that. Okay, thank you.
okay. Now I'm going to try this thing. Okay, on to the next thing. Now I have created, yeah, let's go for the, remember how we mix the blue? Yeah, I'm going to mix again some of the violet. Okay, that's too much. A little bit of the violet and a little bit of the, so that you get this bluey tinge. Now I want to neutralize it a little bit, but I think, okay. Okay, so I'm going to mix this here. And I'm going to dampen. Now again, and now what I'm doing is I'm working on the beak. And you can see each time I want to dampen, I'm going to my clean water and not touching this, because if you dip into your dirty water, you're going to get muddied results. So I'm dampening this space. And I want to see how much of colors I'm not sure. Okay.
Allison, Catherine has a good question. First, she makes a comment about how it's so cool that you're doing this whole painting with just 4 colors. And getting such a wide range. I'm adding that. I feel like you're getting such a wide range of
Hey,
Are you
values.
still driving?
no, I parked and I'm in the house.
Hold on one sec. Let me.
Did you know what you needed?
But the other question
Pretty
was,
much, yeah.
if everybody can
Yeah.
make sure they're muted, that would be great. Really appreciate it.
Hold on a
Thank you.
second. He's good. Yeah.
And so the question that Catherine has is, do you always aim to limit your palette?
No, I have some paintings where I have about 15 to 20 colors in it. I love
Wow.
colors. So no, I do not aim to limit my palette. I'm doing it for this workshop, and I do it for certain, like I showed you some of the samples of my work. In that case, I limit my palette when I'm trying to achieve a certain result. So the colors that I've shown you also will mix lovely sunsets and stuff like that. So while you're doing just a bird here, you could also use, you can see the colors I've used here. They're very much similar to the colors on our 4-color shade. I think our 4 colors, except for the green, 3 colors are, this entire painting is made of those 3 colors. So they're very versatile once you learn how to mix them up. Now, what I'm going to do is, before we discuss further, I wet this whole area. I'm not sure if you can see that. Let me see if I can see.
Did you wet the bottom and the top of his beak?
No, I've just wet the top.
Thank you.
Can you see?
Yeah, you can see the water there.
Okay. And now I'm going in very subtle. I want to define the outer edge of the beak, and I don't want a whole lot of color on it.
What size brush are you using there, Allison?
This is a size 0 series.
Okay. If folks don't have something that small, could they use the very point of the brush they received in the sample kit?
Use these brushes. Even the Princeton works beautifully because it forms a really fine
Great.
point. There are very often I work with a single brush for the entire painting. The only reason I'm switching today is because when you're on camera, you get a little nervous, and that's not the time you want a nice fat brush in your hand when you're doing fine detail.
You're doing a fantastic job, but that makes sense.
Okay, I'm moving this around a little. This is a little painstaking, but it's worth it when you finish. The precision that you use for this is worth it. So I'm going in a little darker here now. And the underneath. So I haven't wet this space. I will just dampen it here only. Now what I'm going to do is leave a little white edge there. putting in a bit more of the violet. So we had the bluey mix and I'm adding more violet to this for whoever wanted to know when I'm switching colors, just to get your attention. And I'm going to add some of the Quinrose. Quinrose and the Carbazole violet at this end. We want this to go really dark. So if it doesn't go too dark the first time, that's okay. You can always go in a second time. This is pure Quinrose. And it's mixing in with whatever I put there earlier. Okay. I want this to go still darker, so I'm going to bring in a little bit of the color green. So now as you work, you just keep adding value, because as dark as you go, your darkest darks will make your brightest brights stand out. And that's where you build your tonal values. Okay. Okay. What's the next dark we have is around here. We have a little bit of Quinrose around here. And then it goes into we have some orangey shade here. So I'm going to put that in. The mouth, and then leading into, so I'm just following the shape. Okay, I'm not overthinking it. I'm just literally, you can see it's a map. I'm doing the map here, and then I move here. So once you get a hang of just doing that, you won't find it so difficult. Don't look at it as a bird. Look at it as a shape, and you're only doing that little bit of orangey yellow. Okay. So do we see the red anywhere else? I think that's about it. So these are the places I'm going to add a few deeper strokes, so you have some feathering happening there. And then we're done with the red. We're going to switch to our green now. So this, I'm going to use the Princeton brush for this, and I'm going to lay in, let me dry this out a little bit. So in case it touches it, it won't smear. Okay, so now we're working on the green area. And like I said, I dried this out, so it shouldn't smear very much into what we're working on right now. So I'm a bit of a slow painter, as you can see. I am a bit of a meticulous painter, so it takes time. And they say everything awesome takes longer than you think. So I hope that's okay. Now I'm going to add in some of the green. I'm going to go light first. I think it has a little greenish green in this part. I've added a little yellow to that. Okay, just a little bit here and there. And then I'm going to put only the phthalo green. This color is wonderful. While I'm working now, if anyone has questions, you're welcome to ask, yeah? I'm leaving a few gaps because I want it to look like the feathers are shimmering. And
Hey, Allison, this is Carmen. Hi.
yes.
So you had us, pre-wet the top of the bird's beak. And when I did that, I got a lot of like, just, I don't know, maybe I used way too much water, but it didn't give me the nice shapes that you had. It's a lot more of a blob. So is that just getting water control better?
Okay, what I did was I didn't, you know, the shapes that you're seeing, that's all that I wet. I didn't wet more than that. So here I'm adding the bluey mix just to make a note. Yeah, so to answer your question, Carmen, I didn't, whatever you can see is colored. That's all I wet. The rest of it was not. So,
Okay.
yeah, so that's the trick.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. So I'm using the blue-green right now, as you can see. I'm going to create a little shape here because I want it to look like these feathers are kind of going over that. You can, Carmen, if you have let the whole thing dry and you can try and lift off some of the color. Does that make sense?
Yes, that does. Thank you.
Now this is still damp, okay? Now I've added a touch of this very little over here and I'm going to go back in while it's still damp. I'm going to add just touches along the way. Now this is the bright, beautiful phthalo green, which I adore, but I'm also going to add in more color after that, just so you know, and so you're prepared. So I'm leaving shapes as I'm working, I'm dotting it in. I'm not stroking, I'm just dotting it in because I want shapes to form. And I want that little bit of three-dimensional effect happening. I'm going to darken this here. Now I'm going to take the same bluey mix Our blue mix is the green and the violet. I'm going to drop that in here. So as it's going down towards where it's joining the other section, you go darker over there. And the paper dries at its own speed, so this works fine because you're getting some loose edges and some not so. Few strokes in here. Now this rim of the eye is also going to be the same color, but I'm not painting it at the same time because I want it to be a little distinct when I'm working. Okay, so I think that covers that, and we have a little bit of this here, which is more like the white. Let me see if I can splay this. This is not, yeah, this is not a natural hairbrush, so splaying it usually doesn't work quite as effectively, but we can try. So it's near white. We don't want it to get too dark there. Okay, and we have some of this here. A little green shape over here, if you can see it. Tiny little shape. I'm going to have a little bit of darks in that as well. And a little bit of the primrose just to darken it. Okay. Now I'm going into the eye area. I think the rest is almost dry. I'm going to take a denser mix, a thicker mix of the tallow green and the carbazole violet. Very little water. I'm going to keep this ready because this is the thick mix that I want for the eye. Yeah, I want some of this too. Okay, now as we work, we want to create a little bit of light in the eye at the bottom. Okay, so can you see that? So we're going to paint it in this, the paler tone first, and then we will drop in our darks.
Allison, are you able to I don't want to screw up your system, so if not, that's okay. While you're working on this detail, are you able to zoom in to so folks can get
Actually,
I don't want to screw up your setup though, so if not, then that's totally fine.
how do you zoom in on now? Lisa did it so well earlier. Yeah.
Ah,
Okay.
that's great. And I think others can see the detail
Okay.
too. Okay.
Thankfully, it worked. Technology is not my strong suit.
Great job. Thank you so much.
Okay, I am going to use a bit of a more pointed brush. Size 6. I love using the silver brush because no matter how long, I've been using these for years now, and they still retain their point. You know, I just have to re-wet it and it comes down to a point. You can paint an entire painting with one brush. So it's really handy.
What else is very nice about that brush is the belly on the brush holds just a ton of water. And
Yes.
even though it can hold a ton of water, it always retains that beautiful point.
Absolutely. They are made of squirrel and Rizlon. So squirrel is high water holding capacity, and the Rizlon makes sure it maintains its shape. So now this is where we pay a little more attention, because what I'm going to do is wet this space. My brush is loaded with a pale mix of the blue. And I'm going to now retain my whites. So this is very important that you get this right. So the overall shape looks like this to me. And then you have a division over here. Mhm. Okay, now this is really wet. Now, if I would go into this and put nice dark paint immediately, it is going to just blow up. So in the meanwhile, I'm going to take the nice dark paint and get into this area over here while that settles in a little. So little bit of things just to make it look like this, all overlapping that part of the eye. And we have, okay. While that's still settling, and I'm going to do the green border around the eyelid. This. And I think it is a little less shiny now. Can you see that? So we'll try, hopefully. Yeah, so now when you're doing this and you don't want it to flood your eye completely, I'm going to use thicker paint and I'm going to pat off most of it. So yeah, so it's not flooding anymore. It's wet, but it's not overwhelming though. So I'm going to leave the bottom half untouched. So you get the little shine in the eye as well as you have a glow. Can you tell? And I'm going to add some of that detail here. There's a neat little pattern around the eye. So I'm just drawing that in, little lines. It's really pretty. I think this shape needs a little correcting here. So keep looking at your shapes. When you are working and you see the darks, you'll understand whether your shapes are working or not and if they need a correction. Okay, and now we'll work on this and then we'll come back to that little white rim around the eye. So I'm going to again mix the bluish tone. Just wet the space first. And on your white, I'm going to dampen this space. And that neutral we made, do you remember the neutral we made? Anyone remembers the mix? What color did we use? So we used New Gamboge, Tallow Green Blue shade, and Quin Rose. So we're going to mix those. In a little bit more. And my test paper. Yep, so that's the color, very pale brownish tint. Okay, and a little bit here. And I'm going to blow dry this eye so I can finish off the eye. Well, okay, now our time check. I think we have about half an hour to go.
You are exactly on there, exactly half an hour to go. So you're in great shape. And I love how that looks. And zooming in, I think really did help see all that detail you were doing.
Okay, yeah.
When you do the background, maybe you can zoom back out again, up to you. These few touches of darks add a lot of value to the overall look of it. So just here and there, little bits where you can see them. I think this works better when you're using a silver brush.
So are you using a sable brush, did you say?
Silver brush, black velvet is
Oh,
the
silver. Okay, I thought for the splaying you said natural hair works better. So
the silver brush has a mix of squirrel and Rizlon. So yes, you get the squirrel is fabulous for retaining water. So you
okay.
get a hair there.
So the Risslon is a synthetic fiber that is blended with the squirrel, and that's what gives it its unique qualities.
That's right.
Just as a side note to that, thank you, Scott, is that most pure natural hair brushes are being phased out in
Yeah.
just in general because of the I mean, just because of the scarcity of some of the hair, like the sable brushes are very difficult. It's very difficult to come by the sable hair at this point, and then importing it is a whole nother issue. So a lot of the brush manufacturers have started to do synthetics that try and mimic natural hair, or like the black velvet where it's a combination of natural and synthetic.
Okay, now I'm going to quickly drop these in. These are the cute little feet. So I'm just drawing this and leaving some of it white. The other side as well.
One of the things that I find really impressive about your work, Allison, is kind of your choice in colors and how they all kind of work together. So the new Gamboge and the Quinn Rose are both transparent colors, and that's really awesome to be able to kind of see the texture that's underneath the color.
Thank you. Such amazing colors, I agree. That's why they're on my note card. I try and select the ones that can be used for as many subjects as possible. So if you see the ones on my dot card, I can pretty much paint almost anything with those colors. Any subject. So I'm adding little bits of violet on the side here, just to give it a little bit of a shadowy effect. And we're going to...
We can't see where you're adding it.
Oh, okay. Ouch. Is that better? Yeah?
Yeah.
And I'm putting in the nails with the blue that we have. So the top and sides. So I'm leaving some white because that gives the illusion of it shining a little bit. Little darks over here and little darks over here, just to add to that depth. Okay, so I think that's good enough for the feet. And now we can go to the wow, okay, we've got to hurry. I'm going to quickly do this, which is again, we want our neutral. So I'm not going to be too specific about this. Can you see the whole? Yeah, you can see the whole thing. Do you want me to zoom out a little, or is this fine?
I think as long as you show your palette when you're mixing the color or where you're pulling the color from, this is a really great distance from the image. Please speak up. If anybody else has a different opinion.
No, I think it's very helpful to have it closer up because the work is so detailed.
Okay, so now we're going to work on this area. So do you want me to zoom in a little, or is this fine? Now we're not going into too much of detail. So I'm mixing.
A little closer would be nice.
Yeah, okay. Careful, careful that it doesn't. Is that better?
Yes.
I think so, yeah.
So as you can see, I'm trying to mix my neutral in a larger amount because I want to use it for a fair amount of the thing. But each time I'm adding a color, it's going more towards one or the other.
Well, Allison, actually, could you, I'm sorry, when you're, yeah, if it's shift a little bit, there you go. Okay.
Okay, so I've mixed in all 4 colors and trying to find a way to get it a little more. So that's kind of a gray, and I want it to be also a little bit brown. So I'm going to add a little bit on this side. So you have these 2 colors. Yeah. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to wet this space and some of the areas in between. I'm adding a very thin pale wash of the neutral mix to some areas. We just want to give an impression right now. We're not going to be too concerned about accuracy. This is not the focus. You spend your maximum time putting in your accuracy where you want the eye to focus. Once you're done with that, I need to clean up this. So if your paint gets muddy, clean it up before you use it for a certain area. Just softening this out. Very subtle. I want it to be very subtle. So which is why I'm adding color a little carefully. Back here as well, there's now did you see I used the muddied water and it's giving me a muddied result. That's fine. I wanted that for this area, but I want it to be one. I'm dampening the whole space again, a little bit on the side. I'm going to leave it as it is. And dropping in some of the color here. So I'm just going to keep building now as I'm going, adding little by little by little. I'm not going to be too focused on being accurate, as in details. This is not where I want the eye to come and focus. A little bit of dark here. This is your Princeton brush, and it gives you a lovely point too. There's a fair amount of light in this thing, so you don't really need to draw it out into much detail. Keep adding.
Allison? Carmen again. I just have a silly question. I may have stepped away for a minute when you mentioned it, but the sponge that you use, is that just your average sponge that you'd get at the store, like grocery store, and you use that to get some of the excess water out?
These are I just picked up something. This is a facial sponge
Oh,
that old, I don't use those, but I found it would be very useful for me. Now, look what I'm doing. I'm taking the paint and I'm dry brushing it in. Okay, so this part is not wet. I'm just using almost dry paint and brushing it in over here. Yeah, so to answer your question, it is a facial sponge. You get them in little, they're condensed packs, and you put it in water and it puffs up.
oh, okay.
This is one of
Thank you.
those. I'm going to go a little dark here in some of the areas. Okay, now again, dry brush. It's okay. It's fine. So this part is still wet, so you're not going to get a very good dry brush wherever it's still damp. But it's good enough. Mixing in some yellow to that neutral mix because I want a slightly greenier look. At least that's what I see in the reference. Okay, I think that's enough for a suggestion. And now we're going to go in and do the background. Literally, just left. Okay, I'm going to stand when I do the background, and I'm going to dry this out first because so I think he's looking pretty good, no? Now, why do you add a background when you're working on a subject that has light in it? The feathers, the white areas, there's light caught in his whole body. So for that reason, we're going to use so this brush, in case anybody asks, this is an Indian made brush. It's golden sable, which used to be made by a brand in a store here. And it's no longer made of course, because of restrictions in India on natural hair. But as old as it is still my favorite brush.
What hair is that, Allison?
It's golden sable.
Golden sable, got it. We have some mottlers that I'll put some links in the chat.
Yeah, but any flat will do. Very often I use this one, which is a silver brush, golden natural, the angular one. That also works beautifully. So any any kind of flat brush. The only reason you're using a flat is to cover ground quickly, so you're dampening the space quickly. Now what am I doing is I'm drawing in the entire background in transparent water, in clear water. Can you see the beak is not covered? And you have to be really careful about that. Okay, so there's some amount of water flowing around and there's some amount of it drying out because of the air conditioning. Okay. Now, while that settles in, I'm going to mix in our shade. Now here we want again. And we will be adding in some of the Shall I zoom out a little now? Okay, so you can see the background as I'm working.
What are you going to add into the new gamboge?
I'm going to add in eeps. Yeah, so lesson learned is keep your brushes clean each time you finish using them, rinse them out. Okay, I'm going to add phthalo green. Now, once you get this space, you work a little faster. A little bit of violet in that to kind of neutralize it a little. if you happen to go with this other level.
Hey, Allison, we have a great question.
Yes.
Ruth is wondering, do you ever block in the background, let it dry, then paint the bird last? Or always how you're doing it now?
I personally prefer to set my subject first and then work on the background purely as a supportive element. I don't want to, others, you know, the background you can get carried away and use it more as it'll be distracting. It'll draw more attention. I don't want the attention going into the background. I want the attention going into the subject. So which is why I build that first. Once I have the
Right.
values of the subject, then I know whether I need to go maybe darker, lighter, play with the background based on that. But that's secondary.
Okay, someone's asking for you to zoom in when you are doing exactly what you are now, getting close to the bird. I think they want to see your brush strokes to avoid, to see how you're not overlapping, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
And you really are creating just some negative space, beautiful feathers.
Thank you.
So you're drawing the color in from the background. Is that correct, Allison?
Yes, that's
Yeah,
correct.
okay.
I think my sound isn't carrying too well.
It's tough, with the mic, I'm sure.
Okay, I think we're good to go. Just I think we're done. What do you think?
I think he's adorable. He or she.
I think it's wonderful.
Okay.
Beautiful.
So
And your time management is perfect because we have like exactly the right amount of time.
yeah, I've been watching the clock like a hawk. Okay, let me dry this out and then I will untape it so we can see how that looks. Let me just add in a little bit here. So we have some of that result of the tape showing through. Okay, if you notice, where's that brush? Yeah, if you notice, I've gone off the beak here. So what I'm going to do is I'm taking a clean brush and I'm going to just wipe that off. So that's something you can keep doing while you're working. I'm going to dry it now. So I'll mute myself.
Allison, could you, I think folks are really impressed with that right-hand side of the bird where you can clearly see that the feathers, you've maintained sort of those delicate feathers coming off on the right. And so they want to know how you achieve that. And I can't hear you if you're speaking.
She has.
I think she has you
She
muted.
muted herself.
Oh,
there
because of the because of
hairdryer.
the hair dryer. Okay, that makes sense.
Tara, you'll include a picture of the final painting in your follow-up email, please?
Yes.
Yep. You want the reference photo, or are you talking about the
No, her final painting.
her final painting? Sure. Allison, would you mind taking a picture of that and sending it to us so we can include?
Of course, that'll be helpful. What I'm going to do is quickly just clean up some of the edges, because when you do a wash like this, you see you get these little hard edges. So just a little bit. Just softening them out, that's all.
And then, Allison, I think you had the hair dryer growing, so you might not have heard me, but folks
Yeah.
are really, really interested in how you maintained those delicate kind of beautiful feather marks on the right-hand side of the bird while you were filling in your background.
Okay, so what I was doing was I was supposing this was my shape. What I was doing was I was initially just creating water patterns. I'm doing this a little larger than it needs to be, so you get an idea. Okay, and then I'm adding in the background around it. And it creates those shapes because I'm painting negative. And I can go in and do you get that?
Ah, okay. So it's just that you were using a very tiny brush and doing
No, I
that.
was using the flat when I was doing those, and then I just corrected a little bit with the tiny brush.
Okay. Okay.
Because
Great,
the flat,
thank you.
the ability to do that.
Right.
Okay, so we are done, and I'm going to save. And if anyone has questions, fire away. I hope you guys enjoyed that.
It was
This was
wonderful. Wonderful. I hope you do another one soon.
You're so talented. I just wish I could have your years of painting or whatever it's taken you. How long have you been painting?
Watercolor, I got into late, like I mentioned. So I've been doing it about 6.5, 7 years, maybe.
Wow. It's amazing. And how have you learned about, I think someone asked this too, but I'm amazed at how you know which colors. Did you learn that just from trial and error, or how have you become such a master at which paints to use?
I've had a color sense from the time I was little. So it's just when I was little to right up till I was
really
want
to do it all over again. So do it all over again. Well, I might wait and do it. Like they'll give me a link.
At my office, I could pick out a color, and then I could fabric of the same color, and it would always match without having a swatch in hand. So that recognition of color was very strong. Just a gift, I think, God's given.
Maybe you should do a color mixing class, Allison, where we,
Actually, Allison on Facebook on the Daniel Smith page has a feature on every Monday, and it's called Monday Mixes, and she covers quite a few of her favorite blends.
That's cool.
Yeah, definitely.
No,
And
I
it-
agree. I mean, color mixing is probably one of the hardest things to tackle, especially in watercolor. So
We just managed to get Daniel Smith paints, I think, in India since the last about 4 years. Before that, I had to beg and borrow from people coming from the US. Can you please get me one tube of New Gamboge and one tube of this? So, yeah, that's how I built my collection of paint, little by little by little.
well, Allison, thank you so much. We have to wrap up now because we're over time. Did you want to show real quick how you would use the jelly roll?
Oh, yeah, okay. It's not really needed right now, but yeah, we can try it out. So I could possibly just lengthen these a little where they're broken out a little. And I'm going to add a few touches here and there. And a little bit over here. Not much, just that.
Just a tiny bit of highlights. So
It's
that's a white gel pen, everybody, which if you're new to watercolor is typically, you know, a tool in the arsenal for tiny highlights, maybe the little white spot on the eye if you if you weren't able to leave that, you know, when you were painting, that kind of thing, right? Well, Allison, we can't thank you enough. This was fantastic and really high quality presentation, and we really appreciate it. And we would love to have you back at some point. And so some point soon. And I do appreciate everybody who attended today. This was a sold out event and we're really excited to have you all. The one thing I do want to mention is that tomorrow you will receive an email. All attendees will receive an email that has a link to the recording. This class was recorded, so you can watch it again. Allison's finished piece, as we discussed, she will take a picture of it, so we can include that in that email. And you'll get a link to the recording on our YouTube page. And then you'll also include it in the email is also a brief survey, which asks questions regarding, you know, what are you looking for Plaza workshops in the future? So any feedback you can provide would be greatly appreciated.
Thank you.
All right, you're all so welcome, and I look forward to seeing
Thank
you all
you.
again at the next one. Thank you. Thank you,
Thank you,
Allison. Thank you,
Plaza Art.
Scott.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.